Logan Harpool with Team Dynamic Discs, and you're listening to the Chain Clankers podcast.
You're listening to the Chain Clankers podcast with your hosts, Quentin Ferris and Horatio Gonzalez. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chain Clankers. What is going on, everyone? Welcome into the Chain Clankers podcast. I'm your host, Quentin Ferris, joined as always by my co-host, Horatio Gonzalez. Horatio, how are we doing today, man?
I'm good. I'm hyped. We just got done with an awesome interview with Logan, and I think you guys are going to love his story. And he kind of brings that, what we were talking about, kind of bringing those pros down to our level to where we realize, they're just normal guys. They're just guys out there playing disc golf just for fun and for enjoyment. And I think I'm really excited for you guys to hear this one. A lot of good things to take away.
Yeah, it is a really good interview, and I really learned a lot from the interview, and I can take those things to my own game. So very excited for the interview. Again, we're talking with Logan Harpool. He's with Team Dynamic Discs. Very good player. Super excited for the interview. Horatio, anything else you want to say about the interview before we get into it?
No, I'm just saying stay tuned. A lot of good. This is going to be our first interview with someone, and we'll have them tell their story. And then at the end of the interview, we're going to do what we like to call the ACE round. So it's just 5 questions that we're going to ask everyone we have on this show, and it's going to be kind of simple questions, specific, kind of for our listeners. And I think you guys will like it. So stay tuned, but let's get to it.
All right, guys, here we are sitting down with Logan Harpool. You heard him in the intro with Team Dynamic Disc. Super excited to be talking to Logan today. Logan, how are you doing today, man?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, man, super excited. I know Horatio and I are very excited to do our first ever interview on the podcast, and thankful that it's coming with you. Thankful it's coming from a dynamic guy, another guy out here in Kansas, just slanging it up and tearing it up out here, man. So super glad to have you on. So let's just kind of start with, how did you get into disc golf? What started getting you into disc golf? And just kind of, I guess, explain how you got to where you are now.
So my story is probably a little different than most. It can be really long, but I'll shorten it down for the podcast. But I knew that disc golf was a game in a park. When I was in high school, I played baseball. We were all over the place. Most of our games were on college campuses, so there were baskets, but that's all we knew, was that it was a goofy game. Didn't know anything about it being an actual sport, much less a tour or anything. So get out of baseball, don't really touch it, don't do anything with it. Get to 2016, got with a buddy who lived pretty close to me, and him and his wife had gotten into it. They wanted me to play. I didn't really care about it a whole lot. They gave me a backpack full of discs, though. That's kind of the disc golf community, man. There's so many awesome, generous people, and gave me a backpack full of discs. I played a little bit and then put it in the garage and didn't touch it. But it would quickly become a pretty big blessing. In 2017, my senior year of college, I played every sport growing up. I was very mentally tough. I played baseball at a pretty high level, played every sport there was, and I had mental toughness there. But I fell into anxiety and depression in 2017 to the point where I went and got help. And while I was in therapy, I got the strategies and things to use to correct the way you're thinking and got all that, but I'm a mover. And when I was at home and I couldn't move, I'd start bugging out. So when I'd have a panic attack, or when I would feel that coming on, I would grab a stack of discs out of that bag and I'd go in the backyard, and we've got a pretty big property, and I would just start pegging trees. And again, at this time, I still don't know that there's a tour or that there's tournaments that you can make money. I had no idea. All I knew was that for some reason this could calm me down. And so that's how the skill was crafted. And it was the biggest blessing in hindsight, because I didn't have my eyes set on tournaments or a score or par. It was just learning to love the way discs fly, discovering how they fly, and just truly learning to love the game. Then I kind of bust on the scene and win a rec tournament. I jumped to advanced, got kicked around a little, won 5 or 6 in a row. 2018, I jumped to MPO, took third in a C tier. Early 2019, got my first pro win, the Monkey Island Open, and the ball started rolling from there. So it happened really quickly. But the biggest blessing of all was that I didn't have my sights set on where I'm at. I learned to love the game first, and everything else became really easy because of that.
I
And
think
I think
that's an
that's
awesome
pretty.
story. Go ahead, Horatio.
I think that's pretty true, especially I think some people that become really well at the sport are the ones that learn to enjoy it first and then become competitive. I know some people that come out with their sights set on competing at a pro level or something like that. They skip a lot of those fundamentals of just learning the sports and learning the skills and being able to hone it really well and eventually get to the point where you're confident. Think a lot of people skip that period where you're just building the confidence, and that's major when you get to tournaments.
Yeah,
Uh,
and when people fast track themselves, they're robbing themselves of a lot of experience. And not only experience, but some of my best friends are intermediate advanced players, and I met them on my way up. And when you just jump and you fast track yourself, you're not getting everything you can out of the journey. There's every single step. You're going to learn something in all those steps. And though mine was quick, I still went through every step. I still failed. I still got kicked around. Then I got to where I'm at now, and the real fun can begin. But yeah, that don't wish it all away. It's a journey and
Yeah.
it's a fun one.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those things where it's really critical for our listeners to hear that story right then and there, because we have never said we are going to cater to the top of the line. We really want to focus on those like yourself who really didn't know a whole lot about disc golf jumping into it, or, they're starting to have some fun. They're starting to learning about it. They're loving the game. And I mean, in what, just 2 or 3 years, you went from picking up some discs and throwing them at trees to now being a very talented player, somebody who is competing and having an even more fun time while out there on the course. And I think that's something that literally every single person can kind of take with them and take into their own game. And that mental toughness, I think, is something that is really important on the disc golf course. You played baseball. I know I played baseball as well growing up. And, when you're playing these team sports, there's other people on the team, where disc golf, it's just yourself. So it's one of those things where you learn to, if you can't calm down, you're just going to let your round kind of get out of whack, I guess. So could you kind of go into maybe a little bit of detail on, if you're having a tough round, what can kind of, I guess, calm you down and kind of, reset your mental, I guess?
It's going to be different for everybody for sure, but I think the bottom line is that for the majority of us, this isn't paying our bills. This is not life and death. It's different for a touring pro who's, living out of the vans that they have tricked out into little homes and stuff. You've got to make money, especially if you're not sponsored, to get to that next stop. And that's a lot of pressure. For me, I'm a high school special education teacher. I make my money doing that, and I do this on the side. So keeping it all in perspective, but as far as on the course, you have to find your mechanism that calms you down, that keeps things in perspective, or allows you to not look in the rearview mirror, because you're probably upset about something that has already happened. You getting angry about it doesn't change the fact that you just carded a triple bogey and lost a disc. You have to look at what's ahead of you. Don't let your bad shot affect your next shot, and keep moving forward. And for me, that's a lot of faith for me. I've got some scripture written on a mini that calms me down. And, more often than not, when you throw a bad shot, you kind of swat at your mini or whatever. And when I do that, I look down and I've got something that means something very important to me, and it helps me keep things in perspective. But they say have a short memory. That's a whole lot easier said than done. But worrying about the triple bogey you just took doesn't change the fact that it's already on the scorecard. Look at what's right ahead of you right now and make the most of what you still have left in your round.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I think everyone should have that small thing or whatever that grounds them, or even just reminds them of why they started playing or why they're out there playing. I know sometimes I go out and play with my wife or a couple of friends or something, and in my head, I'm practicing for that next tournament or I'm practicing to get better, but I'm out there just to kind of play for fun with them. And I'll get distracted and I'll start getting frustrated and I'll let it ruin it. So I think it's important to, even when you're not playing tournaments and you're just going out to play around with your buddies, to kind of just enjoy it for what it is sometimes, and not let it get to you.
Simon Lazada is a great example of that. He talked about that. I think it was on one of his vlogs, and he was answering questions, and he'll throw a bad shot and he'll smile, and he's obviously not happy about it, but he said something, dude, it's disc golf.
Yeah.
And that's how it's disc golf.
Yeah.
This isn't life and death. We're playing a game. you know, and even though there's money on the line, it's still just disc golf. It's not worth getting angry about.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and I think that's something that everyone listening to the show right now can kind of take and apply that to their game right away. I know that's something that I'm definitely going to apply to my game right away. I was competing in one of my first tournaments, and I was not smart, didn't think something through, and I decided, I threw a shot OB off the tee, and I thought that you could re-tee and just take the 1-stroke penalty, not 2 strokes. And so when I put it in for a 4, another card member was like, no, that's a 5. And I was just like, literally, what? How is that a 5? Like, you're just trying to take me out of contention. Like, and it just messed with me. In the next 3 holes, I'm pretty sure I took either a 4 or 5 on every single one of those holes. So that kind of leads me to my next question. Then, we just talked a little bit about, being calm, it's just disc golf, have fun out there. But I guess what was something in your game that allowed you to get more consistent? I reached out to some of our listeners on Twitter, and something that they wanted to learn about was that consistency. What kind of has led and helped you in becoming more of a consistent disc golfer?
I think definitely repetition. Repetition, number one. You have to put in the reps. You have to teach your body what to do to the point where you don't have to think about it anymore. You just trust it. But simplifying things. The less movement I have, the more likely I am to repeat it over and over. It's like the game you played in middle school where you put your hand down and they take a spoon or a knife and go between your fingers over and over. If you go fast, you're going to hit your fingers. If you go slow, you hit the gaps every single time. And for me, I slow things down. I keep things very simple. And that, for me, is repeatable. So that's what I bank on for consistency. But there's no substitute for those reps within reason where you don't wind up hurting yourself or something. And that's why you have to keep it fun, because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of reps. It's a lot of time. And if you don't find ways to smile and laugh while you're doing it, you won't enjoy it anymore. And that's not what disc golf's about. So reps and keep it simple.
Good. I know for myself, definitely that was one thing. Starting out, you feel like you need to jump into run up X step, and especially you're not as good as some of the other players that have been playing, so you think that the harder you throw it, the more distance you'll be able to get and be able to keep up with the better players. And that is not true at all. I would go out there and just try to rip it and have zero control, as to where I started to really slow it down, and it felt almost effortless, like I was barely even throwing the disc, and I had way more control every time. Mm-hmm. I know going back and watching some of the pros now and watching how they play, some of them, it looks like they're not even trying, throwing maybe at 30-40%, but they're so accurate just because they're able to control their body like you're talking about.
I'd much rather be 80 feet shorter off the tee and inbounds and get that extra 80 and be leaking out because I can't control it. And that smoothness, that's how distance happens. I tell people, you want to throw farther, quit trying. Just be smooth. When you try to throw hard, it's not going to go far. Be smooth, make that thing move straight through. And once you get the right timing one time, it just clicks. You're like, that's how you do it. Yeah. And the best throws come when you're not trying, when you're relaxed.
Yeah, that's great advice, and something I think everyone will be able to kind of hone in on that and recognize that and be able to take that forward. So I kind of want to move in the direction now, talking a little bit about, joining the pros, playing that MPO field, and kind of take me through was there something in your mind that was like, yes, I am ready to play in the MPO division? Or was it just kind of like, you know what, I've been working at this for a little while now, I think I'm good enough to do that? Kind of talk us through how you kind of came to the decision that you were going to start playing MPO and kind of try to go more pro in disc golf.
Well, I never really cared much about my rating until I kind of probably halfway through my advanced little time that I was in advanced, I kind of started paying attention to the rating. But that had nothing to do with me moving up. Me moving up had everything to do with I was making mistakes and still winning. And that's when I knew, this isn't for me anymore. I can probably hang with those guys, and it's going to push me to eliminate those mistakes. So the last couple, I wasn't sandbagging because I was still pretty new, and I'm still learning how to play. I can't imagine what I was thinking back then, but I was making mistakes and I was still in contention and winning. So that's how I knew I wanted to move up. But that was the goal all along. I wanted to play the best. And I remember watching these guys and studying them. And it's crazy that I'm toe to toe with them now. These guys that I was studying, and I was the kid in the gallery following them. I would finish my round and I'd go find MPO lead card and watch what they're doing. And now I'm toe to toe with every one of them, and it's so much fun.
I guess that's pretty exciting. And what was that period of when you picked up the bag and then you decided you were ready to go toe to toe with these guys and start playing pro? What was that time?
Like the actual date would have been like,
I guess just like how long it took you, or like.
Oh, well, I'm probably an outlier in how quickly it happened just because of the way I started, and I had that skill already developed from throwing at the trees and stuff. It was probably a year and a half, 2 years, but I knew when I went up, the goal was to win. I'm not showing up for second place ever, but I knew I'm going to get kicked around a little bit, and that's part of it. You're going to move up, you're going to get beat, and that's how you learn. And then you start winning. Then you're able to learn how to win. And so I took third in my first tournament, and I think the reason I did that is because it was a local event. I was friends with the guys on my card, really, and they kept it loose. We were relaxed. But I didn't start with an A tier in MPO. I started with a local C tier. And then when I showed up to Monkey Island Open, which turned out to be my first win, I just told myself, I'm not supposed to win this. There's no pressure on me at all. These guys are supposed to beat me. And putter was on, threw some good shots, and had some confidence from that moving forward.
Hell yeah, man. That's awesome. Let's talk a little bit, about playing in the DDO. First off, let's talk about what was the layoff like for yourself, kind of what were you just back in the backyard throwing at trees trying to stay warm, or kind of talk about that a little bit, but also just the experience of playing in the DDO. This is the first real big startup for the Disc Golf Pro Tour. You're out there. We were talking a little bit before we started recording, there are 15 cameras on Ricky Wysocki's putt. Like just describe to me that kind of energy and just what that tournament was like, and maybe how it was different from any other tournament you've played before.
It was a ton of fun. For me, the layoff, the one thing I missed was competition. I never quit playing, though. I was still getting to courses, and I'm still playing those practice rounds. And I'm either playing a practice round where I'm throwing multiple and I have no idea what I'm shooting, or I'm playing it exactly like a tournament, and I'm picturing Eagle, Ricky, and Paul on my card. And I got to beat them. And you're putting yourself in those pressure situations. It's all your imagination, but it helps. And so when I show up to DDO and you see the Pro Tour banners and all that, to me, that excites me. Some people, I understand that you can get nervous on that stage. I love it. I love the pressure. And that event was a whole lot different because, like you said, it was the first one back and there were no AMs. So it was only the top guys. There were no spectators. And so it was really easy to interact with the touring guys because there's no – I don't want to refer to AMs as distractions, but with a bunch of spectators, when the round's over, people leave. People get out of there. People hung out this time. And I got to talk to Eric Oakley, to Calvin a little bit, and those guys. And they're just human beings. They're awesome human beings. They're so much fun to be around. But, yeah, that stage is fun. But ultimately, I think my best advice to someone who's going to one of those, it's just disc golf. The game doesn't change. Throw the Frisbee in the basket, you shoot well. The game never changes, no matter what the banners say, no matter how many cameras are on you. It's just disc golf.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's cool about this sport is you'll see it on Disc Golf Network when they're playing, and whether it's Kevin Jones or Ryan Wysocki and they make a 60, 80-foot putt, the guys on their cart are cheering them on, and it's just boys having fun, or whoever's playing, or Paige, same with them. They make a sweet shot. Everyone's cheering for them, and I think that helps. And this last tournament that they played, and everyone was just on fire with their putts. And I think part of that was just because they were just having fun. They were competing, but they were trying to compete with each other, but in a way that they weren't getting frustrated. They weren't overthinking it. And it was a blast to watch for everyone else.
Oh, yeah. And the first person that comes to mind when you talk about positivity is Zach Johnson out of Missouri. He's an Innova player, and that dude is just as excited when you make a putt as when he makes a putt.
Yeah.
And it's awesome. I mean, this community is awesome, and it's no different when you get to play against those guys. They're great. They're high-fiving you. Not now with COVID, but man, it's different than any other sport. It really is.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see another sport and the folk who play it and compare them to the folk who play disc golf, because I've always said the folk who play disc golf are some of the nicest, most supportive, but also competitive people out there. And it's really it's one of those things where you can literally I was out doing some field work yesterday, and this guy just walked up to me and we had a 20-minute conversation about disc golf and the trooper bag that I have, and you know what I'm doing and stuff like that. And you don't see that with other sports, so that's really cool. We got one more question before we get into the ace round, which is the same 5 questions we're going to ask every single person that we interview. But the last question is here, and some people on Twitter they've wanted to know, how did you get sponsored by Dynamic, and what was that process like, and is that something where you just have to be ridiculously good to do, or what was your experience like with that?
So I live in Wichita, which is about an hour south of Emporia, so we're not far from them, and they're around, and they knew who I was. They pay attention to the scene, and if you're playing well and you're throwing their stuff, they probably already know about you. But I didn't really push for it. Brian Shintaku and Robert McCall were the team managers at the time. They've since both moved on. Robert shifted over into marketing, and Taco went to do his own thing. But they knew who I was, and I think I told Taco, if a spot opens up, just keep me in mind. I didn't bug him or anything, but I just said I wouldn't mind it, And I just kept doing what I was doing. Be yourself, I think, is the best advice, because if you're being someone fake on social media, which I hate to say it like that, but it's easy to be someone different. Well, then when you step on the course and you have a different reputation on the course, that's not something that's very attractive to a company. Be the same person all the time, and if it's good enough, it's good enough. They know about you and they'll pick you up. I don't think sponsorship is for everybody, because unfortunately there's not enough spots to go around. But you do not have to be a 1,000 rated player to be sponsored either. Especially with a company like Dynamic, they want to grow the sport. And there are people who are sponsored to run events, and they do a really good job of it. Trilogy challenges, veterans for vets, even small C tiers, things like that. If you're doing things to grow the sport and you're going about things the right way in a professional manner, you got a shot to be sponsored. But keep in mind, like I said, that I don't think it's for everybody. I'm fortunate to be sponsored to hit A tiers and B tiers and show out and try to do my thing. But I also want to promote product and help the company. So if you look at my social media, it's a lot of my YouTube stuff, and I'm talking about what I'm throwing and what's working for me. But like I said, there's people that are sponsored to run events, and they do a real good job of it. So find your niche and what you're good at in the disc golf community, and do it because you love it. Don't do it to get sponsored. Do it because you love it, and things will fall into place for you.
What are some things that maybe that people don't think about when talking about sponsorship? I'm sure people think they get free discs, they get gear or whatever. What's some things that kind of behind the scenes that maybe you didn't think about until you actually were sponsored, and it kind of like, maybe was it tough converting to only throwing Dynamic, or was it tough to having a different reputation like you talked about, or is there anything you can think of?
No real challenges with it. I was already throwing this stuff before, so that made even more sense when they reached out. I didn't hesitate at all, because this stuff works for me and I love it. I think the biggest surprise is when you do become part of a team, you're part of a family that ranges all over the world, literally. And I've got teammates in close to every city that I'm going to go to. And, we don't just stay hidden. If you see some team players and they're wearing this logo, walk up to them. Chances are, if they're on this team, they're friendly enough, they're going to throw around with you and they're going to try to help you. But that's the coolest thing. If there's anything behind the scenes, it's that when you hear that DD's a family, it really is. And we're all pretty close, and we like to help people, and we like to grow the sport. That's our number one goal.
That's awesome, man. I think that is the number one goal, is to grow the sport. But let's go ahead, guys. Let's get into the ace round now. And let's start here with our first question. And assuming that you're taking a buddy to go buy their first set of discs, right? What is the one putter, one mid-range, and one driver that you would tell them to get, or somebody who's just starting out?
Okay, 3 discs. I would want to see them throw first because I don't want to recommend something because some people have some natural snap when they start out and some people don't. Some people put no spin on the disc. So if they're on the lower end of arm speed, probably start them out with something like a diamond or something in that easy to throw line, something lightweight that's understable that they can see fly. Because if you give them a defender and it goes out and gets to the ground, they're not having fun.
Yeah.
If they do have some of that natural snap and a little bit of arm speed, probably start them with a normal fairway driver like a Maverick. Still not something that's overstable, but something that they can get to fly and is still kind of predictable to where they're not throwing rollers and things like that. So Diamond or Maverick, whichever one. For the mid-range, I would go with a Dynamic Discs Truth. It's a very neutral flyer. If they throw it on a little bit of Anheuser, it may not fight out all the way, but if they're not throwing super hard, it will. It's very controllable. They can even learn a little bit of a touch flick with that. And then for the putter, I would go Deputy because they are very, very straight and tons of glide. And as long as they have a basic understanding of the game, I think it'll work just fine for them.
Yeah, I think those are super good. I know I throw a couple of those, and Quint, you throw some of those also, don't you?
Yes, I do. I'm glad you said the Maverick because that's the only disc I've hit an ace with. So that one is very special to my heart. As well as I've been using my EMAC Truth a lot more in the field lately because I had that disc and then I've switched a little bit to a Discraft Buzz because I heard the hype about it and I wanted to try it out and it was working really well for me. But since going into the field this last week and really using both of them, I almost am starting to favor more the Truth just because I know that even if I don't throw it perfect, I still know exactly where it's going to land. It's a really good disc feeling in my hands. I love that lucid plastic. So yeah, I'm a big fan of that.
Cool. So next question. Oh, sorry.
The Maverick, there aren't many discs that I say this should be in everyone's bag because I'm not going to recommend a stiletto to everybody or something really high speed, but the Maverick is one that I will vouch with 100% certainty you need one in your bag. Every player can use it. It does a little bit. It can do a little bit of everything. It's just a phenomenal disc. I love the Maverick.
Cool. See, and that's kind of what we're looking for with this question, just for guys or gals that have played a lot, they've gone through a lot of discs, and kind of save people some money or save them some time buying discs that might not work, or there's those discs that generally are going to be pretty good for any player and will help them out and be a good disc to have in the bag. So that's kind of the reason behind this question is that right there. So that's great.
And those Lucid X Mavericks, Zach Melton, the Tour Series, those are awesome.
Anything Lucid, I think they're pretty cool. So next question we got here is, so either favorite course you have played or one course that's like on your dream list, bucket list.
I got one of each. The favorite course I've played, I don't know why, is Black Hawk in Tulsa. It's a wooded course. There's a few open holes, but most of it's in the woods. It's not perfect or punished. It's very fair, but for some reason it was really quiet. It's got that just kind of in nature feel to it. Like there's no road noise. You don't hear a highway or anything. And it was just super fun. I really enjoyed playing Black Hawk. And then the one I want to play is the Beast in Nokia, Finland, where they play the European Open. I want to take a crack at that so bad because there's some holes where you can let it fly. There's some technical holes. It just looks so awesome on footage.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'd love to see you get there. Hopefully next year you can actually play it when that's more available for sure. Let's go on to our third question now. What is one tip you would give to yourself or maybe someone who is just starting their disc golf journey?
I think we kind of touched on it earlier, but to elaborate a little more, learn to love it. Learn to love the game, and I don't think you do that by scoring every round. I think you do that by turning the scorecard off and just throwing. And don't worry about shooting 5 down or that you're 2 worse than you were yesterday or anything like that. Learn to have fun, learn to love it, and things are going to fall into place. There's a time to put in the work and to, be a little hard on yourself, but don't do that every day because you're going to wear yourself out. Learn to love it and have fun.
I think that's a really good tip. And I can attest to that a little bit as well, because I know there was a definite 2 or 3 week stretch where, I was scoring every single round and I was not having near as much fun. I know my girlfriend also wasn't having fun. And I remember we literally went out to a course and I lost. I'm pretty sure it was a deputy putter. Literally, I still don't know how that happened. And then we couldn't find it. And I was already mad because I wasn't playing well. And I just lost a putter I literally went and bought before we went out there. And we just were not having fun. And then I just I turned off the scoring. And I said, you know what? Literally, the only thing that matters is that we take a deep breath. Let's actually have some fun while we're out here. Who cares what we score? Let's just throw and have fun. And since then, it's been so much better.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So just to touch on that, losing the disc, do you have any advice or any way you do when you buy a new disc? Do you put your name on there? Do you put your phone number? Do you put both? What do you like to do on your discs?
Yeah, I put my name and phone number on the ones that I really care about, the ones that I want back. And more often than not, if I get a call, if I'm lucky enough to get a call, I'll usually let them keep it unless it's a team stamp or something that really means a lot to me. Then I'll want those back, but I'll still usually give them one in return. But yeah, I typically put my phone number. I'm not a fan of putting PDGA number on there because then they have to track you through PDGA, find you on Facebook, message you, and kind of drawn out. But yeah, I mark it up, and part of that is for tournaments. You want that unique mark on the disc because if two people throw white enforcers, and it's just gets to be kind of a sticky situation.
Cool. So next one we got favorite memory playing disc golf.
Favorite memory. It's hard to beat the first pro win. It's fortunate enough to be put on YouTube. I don't actually like watching myself play for some reason. Like I know where I mess up. I get it. Like I don't need to see that again. I'll watch some of the good parts back, but that was cool. But I don't think it's a moment, but the people you meet. We talked about the community, but every city you go to, disc golfers are pretty much the same. And it's that really worldwide community that when you show up to a tournament and you don't know anybody, you're still going to find a couple friends there to hang with. And that's probably my favorite. If I go back and find memories, it's from meeting these crazy, awesome people from all over and really all over the Midwest right now. Hopefully I can open up sometime and get to some faraway ones, but the people are awesome. It's so much fun to get to different places and meet them.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I know you talked, so your beginning, how you kind of got started, you said being therapeutic, then helping you get out of that slump you were in. Do you think that part of it or why you continue to play the game was the people that you met and maybe friends or people that you got you out of the house, or maybe if you got another slump, it got you out there getting outside, and just the friends that you met kind of kept that positivity in your life?
For sure, yeah. A lot of my stuff was done on my own, where I was just alone, and that's the way I would have preferred it. But yeah, the people who stuck with me for sure. And there's more of that going around than people realize. And when I tell this story, I've told it a couple different places, I'll let people reach out, and they're people that I would never guess are fighting the battle that they're fighting. But disc golf can do it. There are other things you need to do. If you're struggling like that, you need to get help. And it's not always a disc. You need a professional to help you. But there's something about a walk in the woods or a walk in the park throwing Frisbees that can calm you down. And it can change your life. I truly believe that.
Yeah. I guess one question on that. Sorry, this one is because I'm kind of the same way, kind of a busybody. I love the summer. I don't care if it's 110 degrees outside. I'm going to be out there all day for 8 hours if I can. Wintertime, when it starts getting dark, starts getting cold, you can't go out as much. What do you kind of do to continue to try to stay active, to try to keep playing, to not let that sink in as much?
Mm-hmm. I try to use my weekends because being a teacher, most of the time I'm out of there by 4. It's getting dark around 5:30 or 6, so I'll go straight to a course. But it's rushed, so you just want to get 9 in. I'd rather play 9 well than 18 poorly. So I'll get to a course, but putting leagues. I think it's good to not only give your body a break, but to focus on whatever your weakness is. Everybody can always get better at putting. There's no one that's always 100% inside the circle. So winter marksman leagues are great. They're super easy to run, and they're a ton of fun to be a part of. You see how you rank in the entire world in putting, and just things like that. There's indoor putting leagues. I've seen people set up nets in the garage and throw. That works to just kind of stay loose and keep feeling good, but I like to watch discs fly. So I use my weekends, and that's a time to let my body recover and probably do more things that aren't disc golf related, just so that I don't burn myself out, because by the time February comes around and the guys are heading to Vegas and I'm watching that footage, I'm excited to play again. I'm not burnt out. I'm healthy. I'm ready to go.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I think that's awesome. Our last question we got then for you on this ace round and in this interview is, what is your goal moving forward in disc golf?
I think the obvious answer, anyone who knows me knows how competitive I am. I want those titles. I want those championships. I want to win every event that I go to. But bottom line is that the trophies and the money, it collects dust. And whatever I win, these discs that are hanging on the wall behind me, you can't see them on the podcast, but trophy discs, and I have trophies behind me on the shelf, they're going to belong to someone else someday. So more than anything, as long as people value conversation with me and they want to talk to me, I want to use my platform for good. Because if I wasn't playing disc golf, a lot of people wouldn't care who I am. I'd have my small friend group and I'd have my family. But having the opportunity to talk to guys like you and be on a podcast, I want to use the voice I have for good and to help people. And I will trade a championship to help a human being any day. So I want to leave my mark on the community as well, and get people playing the game and truly help people in whatever capacity that looks like. Like I said, I want to win, but I'll trade a championship to help someone. And I think there's a lot of people in the community that have that same mindset.
That's awesome, man. I mean, I have no doubt that we will have you soon. Maybe it's not this season because it's been kind of a weird one, but we'll have you back on here and talking about your first big championship and just getting to do that and do a success story on that, I guess. But I think that the attitude you have and kind of you're wanting to give back to the sport, I'm a firm believer in you. If you want something in life, you kind of have to give back, give to people, and it'll come and make its way back to you. And maybe it's in a way that, karma just hits right at a tournament and you're feeling good and your body's good and everything. And that's when you get that championship.
Oh yeah. Some days it clicks. But it's also super humbling. Mid-America Open was this last weekend, and I'm at the practice basket with Anthony Barella and Kevin Jones was around, and watching those guys throw, they're so stinking good, man.
Yeah.
They are so good. And there's definitely another level that those guys are at the top of the game. But it's a lot of fun to give it a shot.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Logan, we appreciate you coming on the podcast today. Great disc golfer, even better guy, in my opinion. We appreciate your time and coming on, man.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening to the Chain Clankers podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chain Clankers and hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to us from so you never miss another episode.